Good afternoon, members. It is 3:47 p.m. on May the 12th, 2025, and the Minnesota Senate Committee on Rules and Administration has come to order. A quorum is present. We have 3 items on our agenda today. It's really good to see everybody, by the way. The first is Senate File 2374, which is the tax bill authored by Senator Rest. It is here under Rule 21. Senator Rasmussen, you made that motion. Welcome to the committee. And we'd invite you to share with us your reasoning for executing Rule 21 and what it is that you're hoping for.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I do appreciate the opportunity to be here today. And I think Rule 21 should be used sparingly. And each time I've used it, this committee has largely addressed the concerns I've brought to it. So I appreciate the opportunity to bring this bill today. If you look, members, in the committee report before you on page 213, there is a study on sports gambling that's included in the bill. And it's been represented to me that this sports gambling study language is placeholder language to potentially add in full sports gambling legalization through the tax bill. And Madam Chair and members, I'm concerned that this would circumvent the entire committee process on a very consequential public policy decision. The State and Local Government Committee has primary jurisdiction on gambling, but we've seen through years past and also through re-referral requests that the Health Committee, the Commerce Committee, the Judiciary Committee, the Human Services Committee, the Taxes Committee, and the Finance Committee would all be typical stops for looking to legalize online gambling. And Madam Chair, I would just also note that efforts to legalize online gambling have struggled in the legislature this year. Back in February, there was a bill that was defeated in committee, in the State and Local Government Committee. Later, that bill was scheduled for reconsideration, but was pulled from the calendar because it didn't have sufficient votes. And we also saw, Madam Chair, a motion in April to move an online gambling bill from the State and Local Government Committee to the Commerce Committee, and that was defeated on a 15 to 50 vote, with 50 of our colleagues opposing circumventing the process with that bill. I would also note that in the other body, there's not been a successful hearing on legalizing online gambling this year. And so, Madam Chair, if we're going to legalize online sports gambling here in Minnesota, we should allow for robust debate, public input, and a transparent process, and not have a vehicle to sneak this into a tax conference committee report. And so, Madam Chair and members, my request today would to be either remove this sports gambling language or to send it to the State and Local Government Committee to have a hearing where that has its jurisdiction.
Thank you, Senator Rasmussen. I appreciate your explanation, including the concern that this is not, in your words, language that creates a study, but instead, from your perspective, language that creates a vehicle for the passage of sports betting in Minnesota. Is that an accurate recap of what you shared?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, it's been explained to me that this is effectively a placeholder, and if you look at the language in on page 213, it just kind of is. It also just doesn't make sense, really, in terms of asking all members of the committees on taxes, finance, and human services to study, evaluate, and provide recommendations. And so I don't think this is actually going to yield a report. It's been represented to me that this is a placeholder to keep the debate going on legalizing gambling this session.
Thank you, Senator Rasmussen. We are eventually going to hear from Senator Rest, the author of this legislation, but Senator Frentz has a question or a comment. Senator Frentz.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Senator Rasmussen. As you know, I'm the author of the sports betting bill, and so my question is, do you object to the language as it's written in here? And if not, are you asking the Rules Committee to make a decision based on what language might turn into in the future?
Senator Rasmussen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would say, yes, I don't think this study, for example, it doesn't include this members of the State and Local Government Committee or other committees that would have jurisdiction over this. And when you just read through it, I don't think it's going to produce a workable study for this legislature, and that's my concern why this is similar to other provisions that are in the bill, just a placeholder. And so that's why I'm objecting to it today.
Thank you, Senator Rasmussen. Senator Frantz.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So Senator Rasmussen, am I understanding you correctly that were the language in this bill drafted to your satisfaction to produce a study, you'd be okay with that?
Senator Rasmussen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Senator Frantz. I think, again, the jurisdiction for gambling legislation is the State and Local Government Committee. And so I think if the State and Local Government Committee, if someone wanted to draft a bill and introduce it to study sports gambling, this language has never been introduced in a bill. And if it were to be introduced in a bill, it would most likely be referred to the State and Local Government Committee where they could have a debate on if this is an issue to be studied. So I would prefer that we use our normal legislative process when discussing an issue that has such consequences to Minnesota families.
Senator Frantz.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Senator Rasmussen. Well, I do find sometimes in the legislature that we study things when we don't have a consensus, and since this topic certainly seems to me to fit that, I look forward to further discussions about where a study might be helpful. With that, thank you, Madam Chair, for the questions and comments, and thanks, Senator Rasmussen. To be continued.
Thank you, Senator Frantz. Senator Rasmussen, I appreciate you bringing this before this committee, and I'd like to invite Senator Rest.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, of course, Senator Rasmussen, I really resent your insult to me and my committee by using the word sneak. This was put in the bill in committee with discussion and also amendments. So I won't ask you to apologize, but you did insult us, and I resent that greatly. Madam Chair, we often, as Senator Frantz pointed out, when there is not consensus on an area, and that's true in other parts of, in other issues in this bill as well, we put in placeholders so that both in conference committee and and during the interim, that there can be some sort of official action that this is an important subject that should remain before us in a committee. So it is not, quite frankly, it's nothing unusual. When we want to replace a, quote, placeholder with actual language, we do that. And in the tax committee, we removed, quote, a placeholder dealing with the the ballpark tax and put in actual language from a bill. And I would assume that if there's, other than in the tax bill, and that will be my position, calling for the study that that language that is to replace it this session would be rejected, and the study itself would be allowed to go forward.
Thank you, Senator Rest. Senator Marty, and then Senator Miller.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Rest, I will not call it sneaky or anything, but there are 1, 2, 3, 4, I think there were 5 studies that were, I think you would describe as placeholders. And as you said, one of them on Thursday or whatever day you met last week was replaced with actual language, the Hennepin County Ballpark extension repurposing. To me, that's, I only know, I've looked at the language in here, it's $9 million a year in extra money from the tax collections that are going to a ballpark. That was one plugged in there. As far as I know, there was no bill to do that. There were no hearings on that. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but I heard no hearings, no discussion. If I look at the targets the Senate had for housing, for all of our housing needs, where we got like 1 in 5 kids are ill-housed, we put $4 million in over the next 4 years. This is $36 million just to make a place a little bit nicer for for a team and something that's been profitable to the owners. You have another 3 or 4 in here as well, and I was actually prepared with an amendment. I'm understanding this bill is going to tax committee, so I won't offer it here today, but it would take out all of those studies and the one that was implemented into language, because I think that deserves a discussion, a broader discussion than a 5-minute amendment. Matter of fact, on the one that you did convert to it, I remember you saying earlier this year you were taking it off the table for the year. I thought, okay, that's not going to come up this year. And then all of a sudden I see it comes out of tax committee. So I guess my concern is that there isn't the transparency in terms of the public being able to testify on it, because nobody knows it's coming up. And I just have, whether the sports betting one or the U.S. Bank Stadium study or the St. Paul sales tax or all the other ones, it just seems to me that those are not a good way to legislate. If we're going to move forward on it, let's have the thorough discussion, go through the legislative process, because these are not tiny issues, they're major issues. I am not planning to offer this today if you're sending the bill back to the tax committee, but I wanted to express strong concerns that we put in a bill that, okay, these are placeholders, and yeah, as you said, we can just replace them with other language, which is what was done. So that's why I wanted to take out both the studies and the Hennepin County language that came out of the placeholder. Again, without the testimony, without the public discussion about these issues. And as you know, as I know, public funding for professional sports events are controversial in this state. And I think the public deserves the right to discuss them. And so I would be moving to take that out, but I understand the bill is going to tax committee, and I'll just encourage you in the tax committee to take a look at that when you go back there.
Didn't it come from the tax committee? Senator Rest.
Thank you. Well, Senator Marty, the repurposing of the ballpark tax has been thoroughly vetted publicly for the last 2-3 years. The concern that brings it up now and that made me change my position is that in the Health and Human Services Committee, there have been proposals dealing with directed payments for the poor and the sick. The poor and the sick. And that is the number one concern of mine. The number one concern of mine, that if we do not get directed payments and support for HCMC and North Memorial, who are the 2 level 1 hospitals in Hennepin County, if we can't get a move on that, and in the Health and Human Services bill, the statewide provisions are not going anywhere. This is, when finding that out, and in discussions with Senator Wickland, she is very familiar with this bill. She's heard these provisions before. They have been in our bill before, and it seemed to me to be my fiduciary responsibility to talk about and to prepare and to propose a way forward for taking care of the sick and the poor. It is part of supporting the Twins Stadium and the redoing of that lease so that it lasts until 2059. But the notion that the ballpark, it might be controversial to you, but what it provides for downtown Minneapolis is a safe place, a place to go with your family, and on a sunny afternoon, on a rainy afternoon for that matter. And Major League Sports, whether they are the Vikings and the proposals that are coming forward from them, whether it is the Timberwolves, whether it is the Lynx, whether it is WrestleMania, whether it is any number of things, they contribute to the safety of downtown Minneapolis. And What's controversial to me is that you can't recognize that.
Madam Chair, Senator Rest, the funding for North Memorial and HCMC, I think this is not a great way to fund a hospital, but I understand the desire to do that. I just think that that could have a little more thoroughness, more appropriate discussion perhaps in some other committees too. And as of last year, you also had the same thing in. I asked you about then, oh, it's a placeholder. And it stayed a placeholder last year, and this year it's a placeholder, and you announce it's not moving forward this year. And then I did not see any notice before tax committee saying that that was going to be offered as an amendment, and that's huge amounts of money. And that just forget about the hospital portion, the $9 million a year. That's again 9 times as much as Senate was proposing to put in all of our housing this year. And I'm just saying that to me, that's a little bit out of whack. And there's no discussion of it. I haven't heard any committees have a hearing on whether we should upgrade ballparks with this kind of money. I understand your desire for it, but I'm just saying that putting these things in as placeholders and then all of a sudden they pop into a real bill is not the way we ought to do legislation the last week of the session.
All right. Thank you, Senator Marty. Senator Rest, I want to remind the committee that we're here under Rule 21, that Senator Rasmussen moved a Rule 21 motion in order to take up the issue of sports betting. And we could spend a lot of time on the tax bill here, but I don't know that we need to spend all our time on the tax bill here. I'm sorry. No worries. Senator Miller.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, I'd like to express my support for the placeholder language and the work that the Senate Tax Committee has done. We've put in a lot of time and effort in the bill in front of us, and while I don't support it in its current form, there are certainly parts of it that I do support. Now, as far as the Rule 21 goes, this is not a secret to Senator Rasmussen or probably anyone else around the table. I'm not sure that there's a bigger advocate to legalize sports betting in the legislature than me, and I've enjoyed working with Senator Frentz and Senator Klein and others. And members, what I hope this study will show us is the enormous benefit that legalizing sports betting here in Minnesota would do for our tribes, the enormous benefit legalizing sports betting will do for the horse racing industry, the enormous benefit legalizing sports betting will do for our charities that offer charitable gambling, the enormous benefit that legalizing sports betting will do to help bring large sporting events to Minnesota. I hope that this study will show the enormous benefit and the largest amount of funding in the country to provide services to folks that struggle with problem gambling. I hope that this study will show members in the legislature that the amount of illegal gambling going on in Minnesota right now is estimated to be anywhere from $2 to $4 billion a year, illegal gambling on platforms that are overseas, illegal gambling through bookies, and maybe even the amount of legal gambling that Minnesotans are doing in other states. So that's what I hope that this study will show, and that's why I'm very supportive of this study language in the bill, because I hope that it's going to show not only members of the legislature, but members of the public that legalizing sports betting will be a tremendous benefit for our state. And, Madam Chair, I also want to say that there are a lot of folks that look at legalizing sports betting as a large expansion of gambling here in Minnesota. I would actually argue that legalizing sports betting, if we look at the statistics and we look at the facts of what happened in other states when sports betting was legalized, you actually see less people, fewer people using the illegal platforms and going to a more controlled, a more regulated legal platform. So it's actually helped reduce problem gambling in other states. And once we pass our bill, whenever that is going to be, whether it's this year or next year or into the future, I said this earlier, I'll say it again, because of the work that Senator Frentz and Senator Klein and myself and others are doing, this will provide the most funding in the country to help support folks who struggle with problem gambling issues. So that's why I'd like to see the study.
Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Miller, Senator Coleman, and then Senator Marty.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ditto.
Thanks for being so succinct.
Ditto.
Senator Marty.
No, you don't mean did them.
Madam Chair, I do not intend to debate sports betting here. I think Senator Miller said some things that I think are just totally inaccurate, but we can debate them elsewhere. I just want to say that a study involving members of legislative committees with jurisdictions over taxes, finance, and human services. Does that mean just everybody on the committee? It's roughly the same language in each of the 6 or 7 studies here. I would argue that's not a serious study. What you're studying in here, I would say, is not going to get you any useful information. But my point is that whether you support sports betting or not, this is not going to be a study that's going to be any use to it, and we should take up sports betting as you wish in committee, but not as a placeholder in the tax bill.
Thank you, Senator Marty. Members, is there further discussion? Senator Limmer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Marty pointed out the potential makeup of such a study. I don't think anyone can tell us how many members would be on this committee. It simply says representatives of the industry, Indian tribes, licensed racetracks. It goes on and on. There could be 100 people that are members of this study group. How they're going to make recommendations, I'm not sure. And they're not even recognized in this group. You know, I think of the title of our committee, Rules Committee. And yet when I think of rules and I think of the makeup and the order of what we have in the Senate, we have specific parameters that we play in. And I have a great reverence for the committee process. Committee process is very uniquely to the American model of governing because it allows citizens to come before us and tell us if we're right or wrong. They might even have better ideas than we do. So in this case, we don't have that. We're simply initiating a study by a series of representatives from different groups of people. It's not by what I can tell is a formal organization. One could easily stack the deck in the makeup because the parameters of the committee are so broad. But when I think of the Rules Committee, I would like to think that it follows the rules of the Senate. And when we're considering legislation, we should have a thorough hearing in committees. So I don't believe this portion of the bill should remain. Madam Chair, is there a motion that we're trying to get at eventually?
Senator Limmer, I believe that when we've exhausted our conversation, we'll move to send this bill back to the Tax Committee.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Senator Miller.
Madam Chair, I've heard some concerns around the table about the study, and it's not maybe specific enough, so I will certainly make a commitment to work with Senator Rest and Senator Frentz and others to be a little bit more specific about that study. I think it's a great idea to be more specific because I think it should include specifically the tribes, the tracks, the charities, problem gambling folks. There is also funding for youth sports. I forgot to mention that earlier in the bill. So I think we can be a little bit more specific about that study, and I'll certainly make a commitment to make sure that the stakeholders who have been involved in those discussions are included in that study.
Thank you, Senator Miller, and perhaps consider those who have an alternative point of view on this issue as well, if we're going to do a study.
Madam Chair, I did mention folks that are concerned about problem gambling who I believe are, that would address that issue, and if there are any others, we'll certainly try to include them.
Thank you.
We'll have an inclusive study instead of an exclusive.
Thank you, Senator Miller. Are there other questions or comments? Senator Frentz?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I like where we're headed here. Senator Miller, you have my commitment to work with you on that. Just wanted to throw a quick compliment to the tax chair in this brief way. I believe what the tax chair posted is testimony in opposition to the bill would be allowed in committee, and I believe that is what took place, and I don't believe this provision received any testimony in opposition. Just throwing out there for those members who want to know about process that Senator Rest did create an atmosphere where those that would have been able to object could have, and I don't believe they did since it's going back to the tax committee. Just a little forward spin there, Madam Chair. Thank you.
I wish I had thought of that.
Okay, Senator Rest. I appreciate that. Senator Rasmussen, thank you very much. Senator Pappas moves that the recommendation from the report, the Committee on Taxes adopted, excuse me, I'm going to say that again. Senator Pappas moves that the recommendation from the report from the Committee on Taxes adopted to re-refer the bill to the Committee on Taxes. Any questions? Seeing no questions, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. And those opposed say no. No. And the motion is adopted, and the bill is back on its way to taxes.
Good.
Thank you, Senator Rasmussen, and thank you, committee members. Next, we're going to hear from Senator McEwen on Senate File 3407. Senator McEwen is bringing the Work Comp Advisory Council recommendations. It's also a late bill. The reason you're before the Rules Committee is to share with us why the bill is late, not the content of the bill. Welcome to the committee, and please proceed.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. This is, as you noted, the Workers' Compensation Advisory Council bill. The council has 12 voting members, 6 representing organized labor and 6 representing Minnesota businesses. The council addresses issues and recommends legislation pertaining to workers' compensation and only adopts recommendations by a majority vote of employer representatives and employee representatives on a given proposal. I believe we were notified in committee the other day that the vote that came to us on Friday, that produced the bill, that came to us on Friday was a unanimous vote in this instance. So if you would like, Madam Chair, more information about the bill or some of the reasons why perhaps it was running down to the wire here, I'm happy to provide that. But my understanding is that there's a number of issues that have been worked on that are contained in this bill, the results of which are contained in this bill, and the reason why it has come down to the wire here is just a lot of work to get everybody where they needed to be on all these different issues. And I'm very happy to report that I think the consensus really is behind the bill. So it's a good thing, but it is late.
Thank you, Senator McEwen. Thank you, Senator McEwen. Members, do you have any questions for Senator McEwen? All right, seeing no further questions, then Senator Marty moves that the provisions of the Senate Concurrent Resolution Number 4 be suspended for all further proceedings on Senate File 3407, and that the previous committee report be adopted. And we will be sending this on to finance members. Are there any questions about the motion? Seeing no questions, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. And those opposed say no, and that motion is adopted. Thank you, Senator McEwen.
Thank you very much.
The last proposal before us today is Senate File 570, Senator Hauschild. This is also a late bill. Senator Hauschild, welcome to the committee. And if you can share with us really not the content of the bill, but the reason why it is late, We can get on our way. Welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Chair Murphy and members of the Rules Committee. Senate File 570 is a bill regarding reforming our permitting process in Minnesota. This bill was heard in the Environment Committee on April 7th. It was passed and re-referred to the State and Local Government Committee. From there, it was heard in State and Local on May 5th and passed and was re-referred to the Finance Committee. Language from this bill has also been moving in various omnibuses bills, or excuse me, in an environment omnibus bill as well. One of the reasons this bill is late is just the considerable amount of time that has gone into working with various stakeholders involved in this initiative. Former Senator Eichhorn was also one of the authors on this bill and a duplicate clone bill. And so that was a circumstance as well as we sort of worked through the legislative process on this bill. And so, Madam Chair, with that, the bill has been referred to Finance Committee and is late, and just asking to be able to continue this process.
Thank you, Senator Hauschild. Members, do you have questions about the reason why it is late? Seeing no questions, then, Senator Frentz moves that the provisions of Senate Concurrent Resolution Number 4 be suspended for all further proceedings on Senate File 570, and that the previous committee report be adopted and sent to Finance. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. And those opposed say no. And that motion is adopted. Thank you, Senator Hauschild.
Thank you.
And with that, members, this meeting is adjourned.